everyone. Welcome to the Writers Roundtable. I'm Kelsey Charles, joined by David Hellman, Nick Eatman, and Bryan Broaddus. Yes, my signature high getting thrown in there, of course. Guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about the preseason schedule. The opponents were released today, so we now know that the Cowboys are looking at a couple weeks in California. They first face the San Diego Chargers, then they're going to go in week 2 up to the not New Candlestick, but place to face the 49ers. Then they go to Minnesota, interesting, and then back to Dallas for Houston. So give me some initial thoughts, Bryan, on what you think of this opponents that the Cowboys are going to have to face.
Well, I think when you talk about what coaches do, and they generally try and it's about convenience and about travel and wear and tear on your team. So the fact that the team's on the West Coast, I think, helps with the early trips. You also look for grass situations. You get that in San Diego. You get that also in San Francisco. That also saves wear and tear on your team. But you also look at defensive schemes and opponents. You talk about 2, 3, 4 defensive teams right there too. So that's something as you get into the season, you get a little bit of look. In training camp, you're always working against a 4-3. Now you get some 3-4 looks. So Jason Garrett, though, trying to get his team a little bit of jump and maybe playing some 3-4 teams.
David?
I'm going to leave the big purple elephant in the room for Mr. Eatman over here. But
I like the purple.
Yeah, no, but I mean, just right off the bat, it would be a little more interesting if they were opening in San Francisco, but you get to go up to Levi's Stadium, which is the site of Super Bowl 50. So I can already imagine the start in California, end in California type of storylines. I'm sure we're going to hear about that. And, if the Cowboys do happen to make a Super Bowl run this year, the fact that they get to go check that out and see what that stadium's all about, I don't know if it's an advantage, but it's certainly an interesting quirk.
Obviously, when you're talking about Minnesota coming to Dallas, you talk about elephant in the room. I don't know if it's that big a deal that Mike Zimmer comes back to coach the Cowboys, but I'm kidding. What sideline's Adrian Peterson going to be on? I mean, that's the question. Or at all. I mean, he might get traded to another team. But I think when you're talking about, the NFL, they're doing their job. I mean, if they can put anybody there, why not put that? Because they're not going to play in the regular season. So
I doubt that's an accident.
No, not at all.
Well, especially too where it's scheduled too. A lot of
exactly. It's the
use your player dress rehearsal
game. Which, if we could add a fourth thing, if Houston.
Yep.
You don't have to face that guy.
Hallelujah to that.
Because Houston will probably rest him, and Dave's MVP of the league, which he's not far from it, in my opinion, too. I mean, he's a good player, great player, J.J. Watt, but usually those guys don't play the last game.
Well, it's kind of cool, in my opinion. I like the Texas, the two interstate rivalry, I guess you could say. It's not really a rivalry because they're not in the same division, but it's kind of a novelty in itself. But again, I'm glad that we don't have to face J.J. Watt, or at least we don't think we will. But I want to ask you guys, too, before we have to look ahead to the games, talk about the players that will be potentially playing in those games. Draft. Couple weeks out. We've been talking about it for weeks now. We only have a little bit of time left. So Bryan, I'll start with you because you guys have been doing a lot of your draft show stuff. Who's your pet cat in the draft?
Well, I actually have a couple of them, though. But I'll say I really like this kid, Tevin Coleman. I've talked about running backs a lot, and we've talked about, and where these running backs could go. And the fact that I was really pleased, though, that he was able to visit this past week when they had their 30 visits. And the coaches get a feel for him. I've talked about players that, especially at the running back spot, that can do all the things, like can never come off the field, can run, catch, block. Tevin Coleman can do all those things right now. He's a tough runner, and I really like that about him, the fact that you can use him a lot of different ways.
Dave, you've been on the draft show with Bryan, too. Who's your guy?
Everything he just said about Coleman, I feel about Jay Ajayi. Plus, me as a writer, you have the added storylines. Another Boise State guy in the locker room. He played high school football in Frisco, Texas. He's from the area. He'll be at the Dallas Day, which is for local prospects here that the Cowboys want to look at. So all those things combined with the fact that he's a very good running back makes him appealing for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and I'll stick with the running back theme. And obviously, if they get Adrian Peterson, all bets are off really for all of those. But I think when I see Melvin Gordon, maybe it's the number they wear. Maybe I see Jamal Charles. If you're leading the Big Ten all time in rushing, I think you're doing something right. If you want to get the center and the linemen in that style that Wisconsin plays, the back wouldn't be bad either. So I know he's not really he's a first round.
We're talking about pretty high profile guys to be pet cats, but that's okay.
Next
assuming they don't do something crazy and go get
next week,
Peterson.
She could ask us the same question. and we'll have a different.
Keep an eye on Frank Clark then, and he's a guy that we've talked about on the draft show a bunch. And with Frank Clark, he's a defensive end from Michigan. And if you research the player, he's got a very checkered past, and the Cowboys brought him in. And he's one of these guys, though, when you watch him play, he's got that ability to sharpen the corner to get that rush. So keep an eye. Pet cat guy, they're going to do some research on this kid.
And we like, as writers, we like storylines. Mario Edwards Jr., that wouldn't be bad either. Bring Mario in.
Give us all the storylines.
Right there.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we've got time for you all this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay up to date with all of the storylines going around with prospective players, current players, and the team and around Valley Ranch on DallasCowboys.com. If you are on the go, make sure to snag that app from the App Store, and we will see you guys next time.